So, I guess this is what we are eating today. We have the World Shaper from DC Comics versus Sun Wukong. Oh no, sorry, not DC, from Marvel Comics. Well, sorry. How about we do justice by introducing our noble heroes into a death battle? Oh shit. I forgot on this channel the humor is nearly dead. But well, today we have Gojo Satoru, the possibly strongest Jujutsu sorcerer from Jujutsu Kaisen, versus no other than everyone's favorite Monkey King in the 20s of the 2000s, Jin-Mori, or Mori Jin. Give it up for him. And now let's have a battle between Yoiki Tenkai and Nyoibu or Yoingu. Hello, what a weird intro, man. You'll forgive me for this. I have bad humor. But well, now let's kick this off with Jujutsu Sorcerer Gojo Satoru. I did a video recently on Gojo's character and how it surrounds his power and behavioral influence within the verse, but didn't really inherently go down on how he scales to verbatim low multiversal in my words, but I did for those who can fathom it. So now the thing about Gojo is that he can be scaled really far below this, and it's not an issue. Now I did make mention of the fact that cursed energy indeed is their power relativity, which shouldn't even be a new thing, but power relativity in terms of hacks boils down to if it is passive or non-passive. Let me explain further. See, there are certain abilities that could be given to a character which can lead to abstract level feats, universal or any type of higher existential and construct based spatial temporal feats, which do not originate from a character's innate life force or energy, which makes up the majority of their arsenal. Then it's not from their power, meaning they can't inherently scale to such feats unless they can take such damage themselves. Now, you could always make the easy argument of it being relative or synonymous in terms of a durability to AP feat based on the assumption that the character can withhold such energy within them to output it later on. And this isn't a bad argument at all. Actually, it is rather far from a bad one. But the thing to easily put this to sleep is actually Occam's razor, picking the less or least presupposed feats or assumed feats to scale this character. A non-passive ability, be it hacks or any sort, but mostly hacks based, wouldn't scale codependent to a character attacking or a character using such. For example, a non-passive feat is Ichigo cutting Yuha in half when the purpose of the Almighty isn't even based really much on power distribution or output, but rather a feat that can't cause any serious AP or DC scaling. Yuha was going to destroy whatever he was by literally placing the Soul King out of balance, and not inherently his own power, but I explain all these in my Bleach videos. Now, a good passive ability is simply Kaguya directly using her chakra within her body, which she did get from the Tentails to destroy dimensions, but the originator of this power is the Tentails. But she could use it as hers, and it became part of her innate life force. That without it, she couldn't exist and could exist. Not gonna dive too much there, but you get the context, the fact that she has chakra and she's going to survive, and without chakra she dies. Now, as for Gojo, probably not, because the Otsuki created chakra from this divine fruit, or I think they have it as an innate life force, so maybe that could be wrong. Now, as for Gojo and the Jujutsu world, their cursed energy is a part of them which they use to create techniques. It is literally negative emotions which sorcerers use, but it isn't a life force, but it is a necessity from their being, which creates the usage of such. Now, Gojo says infinity naturally exists, but he brings it into reality. Many may not understand this, but I think the best explanation of this comes from his reverse curse techniques, which are divergence, red, and convergence, forward, lapse, blue, in which one uses Achilles and the tortoise, then the other just uses infinite possibilities of events really occurring or happening or never happening, or things that could never be possible but become an actuality. Gojo then turns them into limited explosions. But what really gets me is the fact that Gojo is simply saying that he is a force of infinite existence apart from the fact his Norio Kusho works similarly but differently, and Norio Kusho means infinite, unlimited void. Yoiki Tenkai. Gojo basically brings infinity into existence in the sense that he is basically a walking void, and that's why his divergence red is the reversal of convergence, and convergence is the reversal of divergence. Red creates an infinite empty space, but blue creates an infinite actual space, in which Gojo has never been shown to use blue just like red to create an emptiness in something, which is easier to do than create infinity in finiteness. But when he joins both, it results into the pure creation of something called holo purple, which is just a combination of infinity positivity and positivity to birth negativity. Since each curse technique is negative and negative, Gojo's reversal curse technique are explained as negative and negative to give positive, so that's double, which would be positive and positive to give positive. Now, his domain expansion basically is fantasy of infinity, but Gojo can create spaces which he can suck things into. That has never been shown, I guess, but it's stated by the author. His technique is very impressive because literally his technique has to do with sets of infinity and Achilles, and they work hand in hand. You can't catch up to Gojo as long as he has his limitless on. And as for his other side of it, every information basically isn't a set of infinity but follows the Aleph cardinal, and this is where things start getting out of hand because every letter is infinite. More letters means more infinite sets, which becomes transfinite. Gojo's curse energy literally can go down, but it can't. Basically, someone like Yuta has a denser and more natural overflowing curse energy than Gojo, but Gojo has this unlimited pool or ditch where he can always refill his energy from his energy, while Yuta doesn't. So Yuta can run out of it, and so as Gojo, but Gojo wouldn't run out because he has it unlimitedly as a passive source. Everyone's Yoiki Tenkai is really large, and for some reason people think Sukuna has the largest domain because it's like an entire city or something, but people forget that in Jogo's domain it literally has mountain ranges and volcanoes, which we can't quantify the size. Also, this octopus created an entire ocean and had a beach like setting, which is where the courses go to chill. Now that's no joke at all. That can easily go into the levels of continental easily, but as for Gojo's domain, he brings you into a state of all seeing and knowing, but you can't do anything as you die slowly trying to process one word. Talk less of transfinite events. This would make Gojo range easily from at least continental or even far less, because I can scale him from Black Flash, which I will explain in my Itadori video. When I say far less and I mention Black Flash, I mean like I didn't put that well, but Black Flash can accelerate scaling very well. But Gojo easily is bare minimum like continental level, which is really low ball because there are so many people who outrank these courses like Toji, who lost to a far younger and weaker Gojo. But Gojo now actually has infinite power at bare minimum. Even an infinite set is good enough to be easily universal, but doesn't mean Gojo can exert infinite energy, but can manifest it to anyone the way he sees it. And if they don't have such range of power, then they can't fathom it and would die. This plays a huge role on how intelligent he can be. He's pretty smart as he sees all and can fathom all. Gojo's bare minimum scales to continental, and then he can keep going into the universal infinite ranges. Something can have sets of expansion but not transcendence. So his peak should be universal for now, but if you go by it being infinite sets, which it is, then it is from there you can accelerate the scaling real quick. Now as for our Monkey King here, I did do a video on Marijin and Handewi versus Naruto and Ichigo in the past. which you can check out if you really want to. I will brief things up here, but you can check the video out, which would be linked down below while I go into who really wins in this fight. Now, Morijin does have feats of being able to tank one planet level explosions in his dimension where his home planet is located at. His staff is shown to be able to fit through the moon. He has been shown to rank or be relative to characters while weakened severely who can one-shot continental attacks, in which Lee Sung-jin casually stopped an attack which was going to send Asia to the Stone Age by a young king casually. People have carved this to like star level, but I just keep it at like fucking like continental plus to be on the safer side. Now we have Morijin fighting all the gods, and then the battle was too much for Earth. Morijin also has feats of one-shotting Judge R and the powers of all the gods while weakened from fighting them or bullying them individually, but mainly coming from a very weird place which we will move on to very soon. It is important to note that Mori still scales above Dewi Han, who can utterly make Zeus drop to his knees with just gravity and using the strong force, projecting the heat of the sun, turning this dude to pure skeleton. Note that this same dude took a step and lifted two entire continents, arguably because Vietnam is in Asia and Russia is like in between them. You can use calc to quantify relatively the exact proportions based off of the distance of Vietnam to Russia, but I have it multi-continental because to leave them, they are landlocked. He is gonna leave the entire damn continent towards the direction and forward from where he stands. But this is wank, lol. The gap between the two countries is relatively 6,000 kilometers, meaning this is barely a country feat, not even close. You guys should watch. Not even close at all. I said barely country, probably like fucking like 100 city blocks. But you guys, okay, way more than that. But you guys should watch how I point out scaling but proving contradictions with logical reasoning. Other than that, this dude still should be at least multi-continental because the gods are relative to the king, at the very least in power. I mean, this lady, forgetting her name, she was able to push Mars, which further backs up my Yoi scaling, which you will find in my Morijin and Dewi Han versus Naruto Nichiko video, in the sense that we gave a range of exactly Mars with logical basis to why, which would make sense since the scaling originated from the same character to even quantify in the first place from her statement. Her arms got cut off by Yui and she is relative to Mars in strength. And truly, Mars would be like moon feats but larger or bigger, larger. Just say high multi-continental feats on Earth. All the gods are relative to this. Zeus is obviously above her, but also is multi-continental, and almost all of them simply for the fact that they was going out, but their power was stated to be planet level relatively. Now you could argue that Gaia is stronger than them, which is the Earth, so it doesn't inherently take their planet level AP from them, even when humans can perceive MFTO reaction speeds, as you can see in the scans here. When Satan touched Jupiter, Dewi Han, while not being able to fully control his power, was sure that if he could have stopped it, but Mori still uses Yoi to push it back, which alone is a large planet feat or planet level, depends on how you want to quantify that for Yoi, which is the second feat higher than planet level feat, as I mentioned earlier, or multi-continental. As for the Gaia thing, just know that Gaia is related to Buddha or Tathagata, which Mori killed. This same Gaia needed all the gods, including Lucifer, who was certain that Morijin without his limiter was a higher dimension than him, but I will get here soon. Also note that Tathagata is above everyone, as stated by Prime King, who was sure that Mori was gonna deal with all of them if Mori didn't lose, but he lost initially. The scaling is pretty consistent. Mori could take on Satan and they fought in the sun and turned it off. Now, people have argued the universe, but that statement of the universe is clearly flawed, as it was synonymous to the cloning of Satan, which, if you want to go into details, isn't even beyond star level in terms of combined measurement of the body of Satan to the space he can contain if joined. It won't even be star level or even planet level. Also, note that Dewi's Hate killed a descendant of Tathagata who could dwarf Gaia in size, or the earth. And also, Devi is stated to be above the prime king who was going to turn Asia into ashes, and also skill relative to the gods. Now, from Origin's normal scaling, he isn't going beyond star level plus, to be frank. Now, for his more in-depth scaling, because majority of feats here is Mori using barely up to 20% of his power, and arguably way less since Morihuri could fight relative to King and Devi Han. Morijin immediately his limiter was off, Satan conceded to being father to him. This is the same guy who could move on floors of arguably existence, but it isn't because of one argument, which is Alif Transcendence. The God realms won't even fit into an infinite 3D universe if it was a 4D building, because it is an infinite gap in length and width, and that's just assuming infinite 3D, and if it is normal 3D, it is a total infinitesimal quantification. Also, the fact that they are barely universal casually proves itself. Now, the other argument to get the gods easily far above is the fact that Hercules could lift a constellation, which is a solar system feat at best, but the issue now is that the sky looks finite. Lifting a constellation in a universe would need spatial temporal curvature to quantify the exact rip in ordinal finite cardinality to show size that isn't 100 billion plus light years large, which makes sense that Hercules is either holding the universe in that void or he is holding a physical representation weight kind of thing linked to such. And let's be honest here, lifting sky in mythology setting is lifting the universe, and we gotta give them credit here. Hercules would be at least solar system while lowborn, and normally should be argued universal, especially when you realize that on each floor the gods get stronger and each floor has its own universe, because we see planet systems at the background of when Ilipio Park used his Nine Tails form to send a ripple arguably across the solar system on the 7th floor, and it was stated that each floor is its own world and universe. And also, dimensional transcendence is plausible as 4D logic exists here, but we 3D beings even have outer logic, which is understanding their dimensionality above us that we can't fathom beyond infinite dimensional axis, which is universal. In-depth scaling you won't find probably anywhere. Then please subscribe, and I'll post a God of High School scaling more. Now, as for who wins this fight, at the lowest of the lowest, you have Morijin slapping Gojo, meaning Gojo's infinity would scale to a continental range, since other characters would view that huge gap in power within his verse as infinite, while anyone beyond that would see it as finite. Morijin slaps in terms of AP and DC for that tier. Now, when you then take things a bit higher and enter the universal tiers, is when things get interesting. Morijin and Gojo can be argued on this tier. Then it falls down now to hacks, and at this point Gojo can't use infinity for someone relative to him or equal, going from standard battle assumptions of equal stats, since we know that if you can bypass him then you are stronger. So being relative means you can bypass him and vice versa. Now, Morijin can be argued 4D based on non-contextual reasoning, and could be argued multiversal if you consider the fact that each floor is a universe of its own, and the higher the floor, then the stronger. There are about 7 floors, meaning low multiversal, and then you think of it that Morijin's realm of potential isn't limited to such, as he has a 250,000 multiplier he can use. Then he would even be stronger than the likes of Goku or close to. And at this point, there's no saving grace for Gojo if you consider his transfinite scaling, as you can't prove it is transcendent. Then Mori one-shots, but since we are giving Mori the benefit of the doubt, Then let's say since Gojo's infinity works based on infinite sets and it's shown to have no limit, let's assume he can affect on a universal scale, which is very very vague, but it isn't because you can't have transcendental infinite sets on a plane of existence. That's not possible. Then you will start talking about high 1B Gojo, which is just stupid, lol. Anyways, no matter the argument, Morijin has far more justifiable and contextualized scaling, which can have strong reasoning to them. The only issue is that at each level, Gojo could actually slap when you think about it from speed and intellect. Gojo has infinite speed feats by opening an infinite void and processing such in 0.2 seconds. Probably could just be reasoning, but if your brain can fathom such, your brain works based on your synapses and reaction. So definitely you should have a relative body reaction speed, but the brain does think a lot faster than the human body can react. So we can't exactly quantify the gap, but we should know it should be sub-relativistic. And then sub-relativistic of infinite will still be infinite because infinite divided by 10 is infinite. So Gojo would have infinite speed. That's just not normal at all. And to be honest, Morijin doesn't have such speed feats at all unless you use him being 4D to place him a whole different tier from Gojo. Then he bleeds, but Gojo actually would damage him. Gojo doesn't run out of energy, so he can actually spam heavy attacks that could damage Mori over time. And he's a lot more intelligent, but Morijin is far more experienced. Also, let's not forget the fact Mori may never beat him because of convergence of infinity to pick impossible outcomes or outcomes that can't exist and act upon them as they are being born. As long as such exists, then Morijin would actually be able to touch Gojo with the same power tier. That's why I said with the same power tier. You can be able to pick an infinite possibility of anything like Yuha or someone stronger than you are not going to find any possibility of you winning. It's almost impossible, especially when the gap is much. Morijin's hacks won't actually help him. Yes, Yongpo can add more durability. Guard can actually seal Gojo since Gojo isn't aware of it. But Gojo with his 6 eyes would know what it can do by merely looking at it. Morijin's Yoi would get destroyed by Gojo, to be honest. This is actually looking great. This ain't looking great for Morijin in terms of speed hack, stamina, and overall energy output. In conclusion, Mori may be stronger, which isn't by a long shot, but Gojo just deals with him with passive hacks. Gojo wins low to mid difficulty. I think doing a Gojo versus Yuha video would be really cool. If you want to see such, either Gojo versus Yuha or Yuha versus Kaguya, then sure, down below.